So, we've got a number 1 deluxe meal. Is there anything else I can get you?
Yeah, I'd also like a good night's sleep.
Excuse me, sir?
You know, the I didn't struggle all night with my uncomfortable CPAP mask, or something like the my wife didn't kick me out to sleep on the couch because of my constant tossing and turning.
Sir, we don't have anything like that here. I think what you're looking for is Inspire. It's an implant that works inside your body to treat sleep apnea without a CPAP. That way you can breathe normally and rest more soundly.
Come on!
Oh, he sounds hangry. Inspire is the only FDA-approved sleep apnea treatment of its kind. It's helping tens of thousands of people finally get restful sleep. To learn more, visit InspireSleep.com. That's InspireSleep.com. Inspire, sleep apnea innovation. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you, and review important safety information at InspireSleep.com.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
The Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Here at 107.5 The Game, Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you on this Thursday morning. How was the golf outing yesterday, boys?
Well, there wasn't any golf involved for me or for Wes. Thankfully for the other people that were on the course.
Oh, you guys would have mopped the floor with them.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, just the opposite.
You would have brought them down.
I did hear there was some ugly golf out there.
I saw some bad golf out there. We had a great view looking out over, I don't know what hole that was, but we saw some pretty good golf, and we saw some rough golf. But hey, shout out to everybody who put that on. Great job, Fink, Debates, that whole crew. I think it's really cool that Beamer does that because it had gone away. This is the third year in a row they did it, I think. And it is third year in a row. And it actually is a really cool event because it's a much more laid back atmosphere than your typical press conference or media day or anything like that. So hats off to everybody involved. It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was a good day. Always cool to be able to, the press conference from Coach Beamer, which I'm sure we'll get into. I don't know that we learned anything terribly new, but I think the cool part about the golf tournament is being able to sit down with some of the assistants, of course. It's the first time in a while that we had a chance to sit down and talk with some of those guys and just learn some new things, get kind of an update on where things stand. So obviously there was some conversations with, Travian Robertson, for instance, now that he's actually been here. We had his intro press conference, right?
Yep.
But especially now in the summer since the NCAA rules changed a while back, now the coaches are actually able to get out there on the field with the players. They're obviously not going through preseason camp. They're not in pads, but they can get a better sense, building relationships. You have more time with the players. You have on-field time with the players. And so for a guy like Robertson, for a guy like Dowell Loggins, when you're going into, Robertson going into his
first practices. Dow Loggins obviously had the spring. You're getting a better sense of what your guys can do, what your team can do. And so I think that gives you even more insight as a coach heading into camp. Whereas kind of in the summer in the past before the rule change, you were flying a little bit more blind. It was kind of we'll wait and see. It's still a wait and see because you have preseason camp, you got the pads coming on, but now you have a better sense. So I think we learned some interesting things yesterday. And Wes, I know you got to sit over there for a while with Dow Loggins, who was kind of holding court. That seemed entertaining and very informative as well.
Yeah, we're going to hear, I believe, some cuts from Dow here in a second. But, yeah, and it's very, again, informal. People are talking. Sometimes it's one-on-one. Sometimes it's a group. And, I asked like a couple of questions. But for the most part, I was sitting there because he was literally holding court. He was telling stories about Jay Cutler and, how, coaching in the NFL when you're literally younger than the quarterback or the same age as the quarterback. And he's talking about just getting chewed out by Jay Cutler at times. And so at the very end, he goes, don't quote me on that stuff. And then he gets up, he goes, actually, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah, I've noticed Dow Loggins is he's a names guy. He likes to use names, and obviously when you have a guy that's been in the NFL for as long as he has, I think that goes a long way with college guys. Like, man, you work with Cutler, you work with Tariq Cohen, some big names, obviously at the next level, which where they're all aspiring to be. I think that's a strategic thing, but he likes to drop names when he's talking quite a bit.
Yeah, he's a sharp dude, man. I like listening to him talk. Obviously, the caveat here, we all know if you get to this point, you're SEC offense coordinator, you're a smart guy. Everybody knows that. So, we got to find out what it's going to look like on the field. But so far, so good. I like listening to him talk. I think he's got some unique insights. He was, I think this is going to be one of his go-tos because I heard him mention it when I was sitting there, and then at a different little setting yesterday as well. He says, you don't want your quarterback to be a bobblehead. And what does that mean? And bobblehead is when the coach is saying, all right, do you guys understand that? Does this sound good? And the guys just nodded and said, yeah, oh yeah, coach, yeah. And then you go out there on the field and you miss the read 5 straight times. Like, no, you don't. You don't get it. So, he was kind of talking about Spencer and the maturity level there, the experience there, that partnership that they have as far as putting this offense together. And, it's kind of like, hey, you got to be honest too. Like if you're not getting this, let's have a hard conversation, but let's have an honest conversation. Let's say, coach, let's do something different here. And, his example of this as well, which I thought was kind of interesting because we haven't heard the detail like this quite yet. We know this is a partnership, but what does that actually mean? Is Spencer calling the plays? No. But what it means is, so he said they had a play they were running, and Spencer says, well, hey, coach, what if we have this guy run a post instead? And so, and I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but so Loggins, rather than saying, no, this is the way the play is designed for a reason, or the other side saying, okay, yeah, we'll do that, he says, tell me why. And so Spencer explains, hey, this defender is here, this defender is there. I like this concept against this. And so then Loggins says, okay, well, what are you going to do if XYZ happens? And Spencer has the answer of, here's where I would go next, here's where I would go next, my progression. And Loggins says, okay, you've expressed what you want to do. You've expressed why you want to do it. And you've expressed your reasoning, your thought process for why you think it would work and why it would be better. So we put it in. We did it. So I thought that was kind of a nice little glimpse behind the scenes of exactly what that means when you hear, hey, this is going to be a partnership. And I do think, I'm getting long-winded here, but I think Loggins' experience as a play caller at the NFL, as a quarterback coach at the NFL, having to deal with, in some cases, where you are the older person and you're coaching a younger guy, or you're coaching the guy that is the same age as you, or in some cases, when he first got to the NFL, having the strange dynamic of coaching a guy who's older than you and been in the league for a long time. So with Rattler, even though he's obviously younger than Loggins, there is a mutual respect here where it's a little bit different give and take versus, he gave the example of Lenora Sellers. Sellers is sitting there, looking down at his notebook, like taking notes on everything, asking a bunch of questions. But with Rattler, it's much more like, hey, coach, what if we did this? So I think that's a pretty cool kind of relationship they have there.
Well, Loggins did speak about a number of things to the media yesterday, and we got a lot of cuts to get to from him. We'll start off with this one, him talking about his play calling philosophy.
I think there's a little of both. I think you have mother formations, you have mother concepts, like we call them songs you know by heart. Like, there's certain plays in our offense that we call that I know Spencer's going to find a completion because he knows it by heart. Like, he knows that play. When there's certain plays in our offense that you call, like, Spencer is going to find the open guy. And those are some of the exposures for him and some of the dialogue from summer 7-on-7, like, hey, how was it? What'd you think? What'd you see? What'd you like? There's these conversations that happen, and then sometimes you find plays that, like, you're really good at it, and it's like your offensive line and your quarterback is really who form the identity of your offense. You do what they do well, and sometimes it's changing the presentation of a song you know by heart, and sometimes it's game plan specific plays that attack someone's coverage rules or their front rules or their force rules, and so it's a combination of all of it. It's not just like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's also a Major League Baseball. Like, hey, if you can throw 27 straight fastballs, throw 27 straight fastballs. Like, there's an element of all of it, and be able to tie that stuff in together and have the feel of a game and be able to adjust as the game goes.
One thing that we know about Dow Loggins' offense, again, we still haven't seen an actual play called, and we still have to wait another 37 days for that against North Carolina, but we know that it's going to keep some of the same elements of what was already here and what Spencer Rattler was comfortable with, what he was good at under the previous offense under Coach Satterfield. So it's not a process of blowing things up and starting over from scratch. It does still keep those same elements, and he uses the analogy of songs you know by heart. We're keeping things in there that Spencer Rattler is very familiar with and that you can kind of build off of and create the rest of the offense around those things that we already know he can do well.
First of all, love how you snuck in the countdown. I'm here for it. 37 days till kickoff. Be here before we know it. But, I think, what did we talk about really all last season? And that was what is the identity of this offense? And I don't know if we yet quite know what the identity of this South Carolina offense this year is going to be, but I think you do like the direction you hear it's heading, and that's, hey, these, quote, songs you know by heart, those are your staple plays. Those are essentially your identity. And so can that adjust? Can that change as the season progresses? Of course. Can you go in thinking, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then you rep it against actual opponents and you say, man, we got to scrap part of this and kind of rethink this whole thing? Yes. But I do like that that's something that's being talked about, that's a focus. And, I think finding what that is would be a step up from, some of the complaints we heard about the offense and saw last year. And, I think for them that the key, that there's a sense of urgency here, I think, both in terms of something we've talked about a ton on the show, finding your best five on offense, but also big picture, global standpoint with this offense, figuring out what are your staple plays? What is your go-to? What's your 3rd and 5? Hey, where our backs are against the wall, let's run the play we're most comfortable with. What are the concepts that are your go-tos?
Yeah, and this reminds me also of something that Dow Loggins talked about at some point during the spring. Don't remember specifically when, whether it was kind of during or after. But he was basically saying, hey, we know some of the concepts that Spencer likes and that some of our guys can do. And obviously, as Loggins has continued and had more time with players, he's going to find out more about that. Even at preseason camp, he's going to continue, learning the team. He also said at that point, he didn't say it again yesterday, there are certain instances where, because of what you're getting defensively or what you think may work against a given defense, you're going to have to be a little bit more, maybe, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but you're going to have to be a little bit more hard-headed with what you're calling. So you don't want to be running a bunch of plays that your players don't like, that they don't feel like they can execute, they don't feel confident in, and they flat out can't execute as well. You want to pick things they can execute. There are, and I remember this is kind of the example he said, you're constantly seeking feedback with your quarterback, or you should be, in that partnership. Do you like this? How do you feel about this play? And I remember he gave the example of sometimes your quarterback may come back and say, I don't really like that, or I don't feel as comfortable with this. And you say, let's try it again, or let's tweak this or tweak that in order to get it to work. You don't want to be so stubborn with it, though, that if something's not working or your players aren't comfortable, that you're continuing to call it. So I think one thing that's important to remember about Logan's offense is it's not this incredibly simple thing. Some of the concepts will be, because it's going to be a mixing and matching of different concepts. There's going to be things that they pull from Oklahoma that Spencer Rattler really likes, some things that they did last season they had success with. There were obviously some pockets of great success, and then some new things and some NFL concepts. So it's not like it's incredibly easy or simple. It's not overly simplistic. It's not overly simplistic. You don't have to do that, though. You can still have some complexities, you can be multiple, you can be dynamic while keeping it simple enough. And I think what it really comes down to is, what are your players comfortable with?
I do think, Chris, that's a good point, because I kind of get the feeling, based on what you just hear from Gamecock fans, people you talk to, what you see on the boards and social media. I do think there is a little bit of a misunderstanding there, kind of thinking that this is going to be an overly simplistic offense. This is going to be just your kind of typical, the last, 5 to 10 years, quote, spread offense, where you're just going to be hurry up, you're going to run simple things with easy reads and just go play. There is still quite a bit of bulk to the playbook and, NFL mindset to the playbook. But ultimately, I think the biggest key to the entire season offensively, other than offensive line, can you sort of cut out the correct portion of the playbook of what you're going to take into a season, and then past that, what you're going to take into a particular game and game plan?
We'll hear more from Dow Loggins and his thoughts on the offense and what it might look like. Coming up on the other side, you're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Guys, I am staring at the perfect picture of the pepperoni pizza meatball sub. Back for a limited time. It is made with Italian meatballs, extra provolone, that's a key here, crispy pepperoni on a garlic bread roll. Again, that is a key as well. Right now, if you order on the app or online, that's firehousesubs.com, you can get a medium pepperoni pizza meatball sub for, guess what, only $6. So as we tell you every single day on the show, the best way to order Firehouse Subs is with the Firehouse Subs app, or just go online, firehousesubs.com. You can place your order on there. You can have your contact and payment information already saved on the app. Click what you want. Again, we strongly urge you to try this pepperoni pizza meatball sub, and then it's going to be waiting for you right there on the shelf. I suggest go ahead, get the medium, perfect size for lunch, get you some chips, get you a drink, and you will be on your way. As always, shout out to our friend Larry, and shout out to Firehouse Subs for being our presenting sponsor here on GC Takeover Hour.
More from Dow Loggins coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs.
For a limited time, Sweet Deals is offering qualified listeners the vacation of a lifetime. An all-inclusive 5-day, 4-night stay in a suite for just 2 adults and up to 2 children in Cancun, Mexico for just $299. This opportunity is valued at more than $2,600. That's right, a $2,600 vacation for $299, and it's all-inclusive, meaning all your food and drinks are included. Attendance is required at a presentation for Vacation Club ownership, but who cares? There's there's no purchase necessary. And you have a 30-day money-back guarantee if you change your mind. Do not miss this exclusive luxury vacation offer from SweetDeals.com. $299 for 4 nights at an all-inclusive resort in beautiful Cancun, Mexico. Go to SweetDeals.com right now and snag this once-in-a-lifetime offer. That's SweetDeals.com.
107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Even better than I was the last time, baby.
We back.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you on this Thursday, continuing to react to what we heard from yesterday out at Birdies with Beamer. But speaking of golf, I want to let you know about the 107.5 The Game football kickoff golf tournament coming up on Friday, August 25th, out at the Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. If you want to be a part of it, it's $100 per person and $400 per team. It's going to have a 9:30 a.m. shotgun start. Lunch will be provided by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Going to be raffling off football tickets, Carowin passes, and so much more. If you want to take part, give Charwood a call right now at 803-755-2000. It's going to fill up fast, so be sure you register early to take part in the 107.5 The Game football kickoff golf tournament again, August 25th, out at Charwood Golf Club. Continuing on with our conversation about Dow Loggins and what he said yesterday out at Birdies with Beamer, we heard him talk about his philosophy for calling the offense. Here's what he had to say about figuring out what those offensive packages are going to be.
It really, it depends on who you have. It varies so much on your roster. Yeah. It's the Jordan Howard who went to back-to-back Pro Bowls for us in Chicago, and then you got Tree Cohen, who's a joker, who's good in every hand, and you're using him in different packages. And every time you get a player like that, your packages grow. Those are game plan players. To me, it's such I can't give you an exact answer to that, but what I can tell you is every guy that we deem as a game plan player, we want to make sure they have touches. And that's what we consider balance, is making sure that, to me, having a 1,700-yard receiver doesn't sound cool, because I want 4 guys that touch the ball, and two of those guys might be tight ends, 4 might be receivers. It might be a running back out of the backfield that catches a lot of balls. It's taking those guys' skill sets, and that's what the talent skill set of your roster determines your pack.
A couple things there. A couple great name drops, Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen, obviously from his time in the NFL.
Tyler's onto something there.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a 1,700-yard receiver sounds pretty cool. I get what he's saying. You're trying to distribute it out to as many people as you can, and don't look at touches and numbers necessarily. But I think if anybody goes for 1,700 yards, we're in for a pretty good season. But that kind of goes back to this is something that's going to evolve as the season goes along. And something else that he's talked about, there's a lot of guys that came in late spring, came in May, that he hasn't had as much time to work with, one of them being Nick Harbor. So you're still trying to figure out who exactly those pieces are and how you're going to use them.
Well, see where he started when he was talking about, hey, it may be this or that. 2 tight ends is where he led off. Now, was that just random? I tend to think not. I mean, somewhat, right? Because there are so many different personnel packages that you can run, whether it's the NFL, just in theory, at South Carolina. But that is a good starting point. When you're kind of thinking about those game plan players, as Dow Loggins said.
I like that phrase.
That's a really good phrase.
I love that.
So your first one is the guy who touches the ball every play, Spencer Rattler. You feel good about, okay, here's some things Spencer can do, whether it's schematically or that he can make every throw. You feel good about it. You're not going into the game saying, I'd really like to dial this particular play up. I don't know if Spencer can make that throw. The answer is yes, he can make the throw. So he's one. Then you obviously go to Juice Wells, and there are others on the roster that you can do different things with. But one of those, there's 2 of those game plan players are at the tight end position. You've got Trey Knox, you got Josh Simon. They're kind of similar in that they can be dual threats, meaning they can block, they can catch for you. So if I had to guess, guys, I do think we'll probably get a decent amount of 12 or 2 tight end sets. I'm thinking we'll see a good bit of that this season. There are other guys, as he said, that he will continue to watch. Nicholas Harbor, DJ Braswell at running back. Juju McDowell has a unique skill set, and there are others. But I thought that was interesting that he did right off the top mention, hey, it may be 2 tight ends. South Carolina happens to have a couple of tight ends that have experience and a unique skill set, and that we feel like will help a lot this season.
I think the beauty of this time of year is that some things start to come into focus. And the fun part is that nobody really knows, but you start to at least get an idea of what the staff's expectations are for guys, whether that's reading between the lines, whether that's on the record just flat out saying it, or picking up things behind the scenes. The fun thing is that, I've had the most well-placed sources you could possibly have in the past be like, hey, this is the expectation for this guy, and it doesn't necessarily play out that way. However, I do think we're starting to get a sense for where the staff's head is at as far as how this thing's going to play out. Game plan players, like Chris said, I think that opens up an interesting conversation of who on the roster are the guys that you're just circling saying, we have to find a way to get this guy the football. If we don't, we're idiots. If we don't, people are going to be talking about it on message boards and Twitter. Why isn't this guy getting the ball because he's good enough to get the ball? My overall expectation for the offense has shifted a little bit from us talking about the 2 big needs for this roster, one on offense, one on defense, all offseason. We've said running back, we've said edge players. I tend to think, and you sort of, if you're a fan, you hope they're not just talking themselves into this. It seems to me like running back, they think it's going to sort itself out. Now, I look at this quote, it's pretty close to a direct quote from Loggins. He says, there's always going to be unknowns going into camp about a position group. And we are talking about one of them that's really important. It is the offensive line. We'll be as good as they go this year. So we've talked about that a ton, Chris, going back to how far can this offensive line take you. Loggins goes on to say, and I thought this was one of the most honest things he said all day yesterday, because we have skilled guys that can play, and we have skilled guys that can play at the next level. We got a really, really, really talented quarterback that can play at the next level, but we got to be able to protect him. And so we need some of those young guys to come in and create depth and create competition. So running back was part of the conversation, but Joyner, I think, has really helped to solidify both the overall position and the depth there. I think DJ Braswell is someone they're counting on to now help. But pull out your marker board, write offensive line down, and then circle it about 100 times. That is what South Carolina's got to figure out during preseason camp.
And I know we're going to talk a lot more about the offensive line. I have another thought on the running back situation on the other side as far as, are we on the same page probably? Let's find out. I won't even tease what we're going to talk about. It has to do with running backs, though.
All right, we'll hit on that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
How does saving money sound? Pretty good, right? And how does saving money sound while switching to name brand insurance that's going to cover you and protect you, protect your family? You can do that with our friend Amy Mason Cup of Amy Mason Cup State Farm. She makes switching and saving easy, whether it's on your auto insurance with the Drive Safe and Save app, whether it's by bundling a bunch of insurance products like your auto, home, and other insurance products. She can help you do that. Amy Mason Cup right here in Columbia, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4 in Columbia. That's just off St. Andrews Road exit off of I-26. That's Ashland Park Plaza. You can visit her website to get more information at amymasoncup.com or give her and her team a call, 803-772-5554. When my family was looking to switch and save on our insurance, we called Amy and she took care of the rest. Her team is experienced, knowledgeable, responsive, and very helpful. They can give you a personalized quote on all sorts of policies, home, auto, business, boat, renters, life, and other insurance products to help you save money after you switch to State Farm. Again, Amy Mason Cup, South Carolina native, local agent, amymasoncup.com or 803-772-5554. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Talk running backs and offensive line coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour 106.
How wrestling really works and how you get the ratings. Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson explain on 83 Weeks.
There's no creative strategy that would allow AEW to execute on the mission of being different than WWE. And if you're not doing anything different, you're either better than, or you're less than, or you're different than. And so far, AEW is less than. There has to be something different. And I don't know what that is, to be honest with you.
83 Weeks on YouTube or wherever you listen.
7-5 the game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris with you on this Thursday morning before we jump back into hearing what the coaches had to say yesterday out at Birdies with Beamer. I want to let you know, coming soon is the ultimate Gamecock season ticket giveaway. I've been told it's the biggest in the history of 107.5 The Game. That's all the details I can provide for you right now. All I can say is keep it locked right here on 107.5 The Game for your opportunity to win the ultimate Gamecock season ticket giveaway. Ultimate. Yes, big deal. Wow. It's huge.
Sweet.
The biggest. Yeah. Got to keep it locked right here all day long. Don't want to miss out on your chance to win that. Chris wanted to talk about running backs. Yesterday, Coach Beamer took to the podium. The literal first question he was asked was about running backs and the thought process of a back-by-committee approach this season.
I think so. I've seen, you guys have heard me say it before, just other places that I've been where we've used more than one. And I've used the example when I was at Georgia in 2017 and we had Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift, and Elijah Holyfield. All four of those guys played or are playing in the NFL. So certainly that's a position that takes a pounding as the year goes. You need more than one. I think each game is different. Sometimes you get into a game and one particular running back just gets hot and you just kind of ride that guy and keep going. And then we've certainly got to be creative, Coach Loggins and the offensive staff, as far as how we being creative, and there's also ways to generate runs without necessarily handing it to a running back. I mean, you saw us do that last year with some of the jet sweep stuff that we've done with receivers or running the quarterback or whatever it might be. We'll be fine there, but we also understand our depth is not necessarily where we want it to be. But we've got to do a great job of developing the ones that we have and being creative with what we do in the run game.
And that makes a lot of sense because you look at the three guys you have available in Joyner, McDowell, and Mario Anderson, and none of these guys I think you can look at and surefire say, yeah, he can definitely tote the rock 20 to 25 times a game. You're definitely going to have to split up these carries, as we've talked about, get creative with the way you use these guys out of the backfield, catches, screens, those kind of things, to really make something out of, what is a depleted running back room.
Well, the guy that has the best track record in college of carrying the ball a lot is Mario Anderson, and he's done it at a smaller level, so at the minimum, you have the question of, could he successfully do that on the SEC level? South Carolina likes his traits, and I like Mario Anderson. DeCarrion Joyner is his first season. Juju McDowell, more of a guy that you utilize in some different ways, right? And the returns on Braswell have been good. No pads on yet, so there are some questions there. I think when you look at the by committee thing that Beamer was asked about, he answered in a yes way, in that you can use multiple backs. Now, what does that end up? What's the split though end up being? Or so we talked with Monterio Hardesty, running backs coach, about this yesterday, and he said, Wes, I think his phrasing was, "I tell the players all the time, I don't decide who starts, you do." Mm-hmm. So it's same thing with snaps. So you may have an idea of we might have to use 2 or 3 backs. You don't really know yet. What if they go through preseason and one guy is markedly better than the other one? Well, you're going to play that guy more. He's going to get the lion's share of the snaps. The example Hardesty gave, of course, he was former 4-star running back in the 2005 class, went to Tennessee, and he kind of waited his turn at Tennessee. A few classes later, they signed Bryce Brown, who is the number 1 running back in the country, and David Oku, who was like the number 1 athlete in the country and was a running back. And everybody was saying, oh, well, it'll be, running back by committee because they've got Hardesty and they got these other 2 really good freshmen. As it turned out, Monterio Hardesty won the job, and he ended up taking most of the snaps. So he kind of uses that example and brings it forward to his time as a coach. I think it's kind of difficult to know how it's going to play out. Yeah, right now one has not separated, so that kind of indicates running back by committee. But you have to go through preseason, and even during the season, we've seen these things shift before.
I think that's going to be a fascinating room. Again, I'm not quite as maybe concerned about it as I was. Another thing, I actually thought the direction you were going, Chris. So, for one, Hardesty did confirm something you initially threw out there. First, I think is just a thought. Then as, hey, this could happen. And then as, hey, this is happening. But he did confirm Cam Sandlin, the freshman tight end, former quarterback, is in his room right now. So that's something to keep an eye on there as well. But, I think the other interesting development here is what are the expectations for DJ Braswell? And so Loggins, first of all, when he was asked about Braswell, he said, ask me in 3 weeks after I've seen him in pads. So he didn't want to go all in on this idea of, hey, this guy's going to come in and definitely play and help. He's got to prove it. But he did say that Braswell is one of the guys, Chris, that basically if you were going to make a list of young players that you're looking at from a staff standpoint and saying, hey, they're very important. It's very important to find out if they can help us this year. He said, he went as far as saying that he needs to have a really good camp. He said he's one of those guys, when you're looking at camp, you're looking at your list of players, you're saying, hey, who in camp needs to have a really good camp for us to be the team we want to be? And he went as far as saying his name is going to be at the top of that list. So another young player he mentioned in that same light would be like a Marquis Anderson. So that goes to show you, and Braswell, not an early enrollee, not a guy we've got to actually see suit up yet and, wear the pads and hit practice and do all the things it takes to show you can play. But best believe they're going to have their eyes on Braswell when camp starts, and it's going to be find out if this guy can play. We keep using the word traits. There are some traits here, man, because he's already 205, 210, but also one of the faster football players on this team. I don't know if people have caught on yet to just how naturally fast Braswell is.
But not just a fast running back. You don't look at him and just go, this is just a speed back. Like, he has the size to where he has some tackle breaking ability. And if you go back to his high school tape, you can see both of those things. So I think the question was just when he gets to campus, DJ Braswell was not a big camp guy. He didn't go around to a whole bunch of camps. So basically you had the film, you had the in-person evaluation for Hardesty and the South Carolina staff. And I think really in some ways, Wes, kind of fortunate that he wasn't a big camp guy or wasn't this big recruiting name, because then the competition I think would have been even tougher. Not to say South Carolina couldn't have landed him, but it would have been even tougher. So he's been as advertised so far, and I'm with you. I think a very interesting room, and going to be really interested to see how much noise he can make among the other guys in that room.
These freshmen are going to be fascinating because we've talked about it before. There may not be one guy that just plays more than everybody else as far as freshmen go. What do we say? Imawari. But there's a list maybe that goes 5, maybe deeper, of freshmen who I think are going to have their chance to make an impact this year. Braswell certainly appears to be one of those guys. And, hey, hot take, man, there's been some talk about running back room, running back recruiting, people taking issue. All of a sudden, you could have, if Braswell is who we think he is, Braswell, Matthew Fuller, under the radar guy, all of a sudden, 4-star by on 3. And then Daniel Hill, huge target for South Carolina. If you can beat Bama for him, which I tend to still think South Carolina is in position to do, all of a sudden, you've landed 3 straight 4-star guys, and that position looks a good bit different than it did on paper not that long ago.
The only concern, as we wrap up this segment here, running backs can only be as good as your offensive line can block for. That's the big question mark this year, is what that line is going to look like.
Yeah. Want to talk about that a little bit more on the other side?
Absolutely. Talk about that next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
It's been hot outside, so I don't know. You know, some of you might spend a lot more time inside because it's hot, or some of you may go outside more because it's hot. Either way, you want to make sure that your entertainment situation is as good as possible, right? If you're inside, lots of people using devices, you want to make sure that you have a great setup in terms of your audio visual. You want to make sure that your internet signal is as strong as possible so you don't get the dreaded little streaming circle of death that indicates that you're buffering. Don't want any of that. If you're outside, maybe you're hanging out at night, hanging out on the screen porch, the patio, outside if you got a fire pit and you want to listen to some music, if you want the TV out there, the guys at Integrated Media, Michael and Nathan, they've been out to my home. They can come out to yours and do any kind of audio-visual service that you want. You can check out some of their inspiration photos, examples of their actual past work. If you go to their Instagram or Facebook, that's Integrated Media Columbia. Lots of incredible stuff, lots of great ideas that you'll probably want to do, to be honest, if you take a look at those. They can do everything from mounting a TV to installing a security system to putting in an entire home theater solution or smart home systems where you can control everything from your lighting, thermostat, and devices from your smartphone with the touch of a button. IntegratedMediaInc.com, or give Michael and Nathan a call at 803-948-8327. That's Integrated Media's Smart Home Solutions. Give them a call, 803-948-8327.
We'll talk about the offensive line to wrap up today's show. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
It's huge. The O-line coach and the quarterback got to be on the same page. Those are quarterback's the most important position on the field. They're all important, but the quarterback is the most important. And then next, I would say the O-line. So you got to work where you're making things simple for those two position groups. So we, like I said, in the spring, we communicate to make sure we're on the same page with the way we're protecting, the way we're blocking things. So Spencer can have success.
And that's Lonnie Teasley talking a little bit yesterday about the relationship with the other parts of the offense, particularly there. Spencer Rattler, and obviously we talk about running backs. Offensive line's been a big question mark this entire offseason, and these next couple weeks at camp starting up next week are going to be pivotal to seeing who those starting five are going to be once game one rolls around.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to find that combination. And you know, guys, I thought we had a feel for how this thing might be slotted, but as we've said before, the Jalen Nichols injury, I think maybe completely throws that, not into chaos, but just kind of creates a situation where you're going to have to try various combinations. And that was the takeaway you get when Beamer gets asked about left tackle. That was the takeaway when Dow Loggins got asked about left tackle. You know, what does that mean as far as moving guys around? I thought it was very interesting, Chris. Kason Henry, he's a guy that actually created some buzz within the program last year as a freshman. They were able to maintain the red shirt. You know, from a Carolina perspective, you would have loved for him to be able to go through spring practice and actually get a full 15 practices worth of reps. That did not happen. He was recovering from an injury. He currently is at 85%, but should be able to do most everything in practice. Does he step up and play a role this year? How do they move guys around? You've got some interior guys that you can move around. How quickly is Marquis Anderson ready? I think we've kind of circled that one for a while, saying, hey, Marquis, we know he's going to play. There's a scenario where he's a game one starter as a true freshman, depending on how things play out. So I think that's going to be, I'll use the word again, fascinating. And, you know, I think that'll be probably one of the best storylines of camp, is just trying to track who is slotted where on the O-line, and are they with the first or second group for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, Beamer pointed out yesterday during his availability that, hey, Vershawn Lee, you know, starts the spring game as a center, which this season was a new position for him in terms of, you know, playing it in a game or a scrimmage situation, and then finish the game at right tackle. So he's his first season, Vershawn Lee at South Carolina, he was working as a left tackle. Nick Gargiulo, who was a left guard in the spring, he played center at Yale. He played left tackle at Yale. Marquis Anderson could play a variety of spots. You look at Case and Henry West, he could play, last year as a true freshman, he was working at left tackle. Certainly he could slide out to right tackle. That's something you may be able to look for. So there is some versatility, but at some point, and you are going to try different combinations. At some point, you and I were talking about this earlier, you do have to dial down and say, this is what we're doing. You don't want to just constantly, and I'm not talking about rotation. I think you can rotate players on the offensive line if you want, but you do want to build that continuity, give guys an opportunity to gel, give guys an opportunity to excel in the spot that they're in. And so you want to have a good idea of, okay, two things I think. Who are our best, 8? Do we have 8 guys that we feel like we can trust? Where can they play if we need them? And then what is their best spot for game 1? I don't think we have the answer to probably a couple of those questions, or maybe all of them, especially the starting 5. We just don't know right now. I get the sense South Carolina staff does not fully know either. You got to go figure it out in camp.
He being Dow Loggins, used the phrase sense of urgency, and he said there's a great sense of urgency in finding out, like you said, not even necessarily who your top 5 are, I think, at this point, but what's the best place to put each of those 5. I think there's, I don't know, man, what's fair? I think there's probably 6, 7, depending on, is Sidney Fugar ready as a transfer? How far along are the true freshmen? We know Marquis Anderson's going to play. How quickly can a Tree Babalade? How quickly can he get ready? Trovon Ball, another guy that I think we're kind of quietly very high on, and we'll see if he's ready to contribute as a non-early enrollee. But how deep does this group end up going? How deep does this group end up needing to go based on injuries? And then, once you start getting, let's say there's 7 guys that are like, hey, we got 7 that can help, that can play, that are capable and ready. Then at that point, it's all right, but what combination, what way of putting this puzzle together gets the best 5 on the field and the best 5 individually at each of those positions?
Certainly something to keep an eye on as we start camp coming up next week. Real quick as we wrap up today, though, I have a special edition of the Garnet Trust Hour coming up tomorrow on Friday. Big announcement supposed to be coming.
Yeah, actually, that news came out today, then we'll expand on it. Garnet Trust, the official NIL collective, or the official NIL partner, they're saying, of the University of South Carolina's athletics department. That was released today by the university. So we'll have on Jeremy Smith, the director of operations for Garnet Trust, and I believe we're also going to be joined by Hillary Cox, who is on the university's compliance team. She obviously has her hands in NIL all day, talks to a lot of people in that side of the industry of college athletics, so should be an interesting conversation to talk more about that.
Definitely looking forward to that. Again, that's coming up tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for the Garnet Trust Hour. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Jay and Terry up next on 107.5 The Game.